How Dejounte Murray makes the Hawks dangerous. The Hawks just made a trade for Dejounte Murray, and in my opinion, I think the Hawks got a lot better in this deal for a bunch of different reasons. And in this video, we're going to talk about a few of those reasons. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. The NBA is at a point now where it's very common to see NBA stars move teams. Whether you talk about Kevin Durant, who recently formally requested a trade, or Kyrie Irving, who's also probably going to be on the move, Donovan Mitchell even potentially, we're just in a new era of NBA basketball where the players have a lot more power and have the capability to actually move teams when they want to. But this situation isn't necessarily that, as the Spurs decided on their own to trade away Dejounte Murray to Atlanta. And in return, they got Danilo Gallinari and 3 first-round picks, 2 of them being unprotected. Now, the Hawks definitely needed to give up a decent amount in this deal, but they didn't necessarily give up that many players, only Danilo Gallinari, so it wouldn't necessarily affect their ability to win right now, or affect their depth, obviously. Now, in my opinion, I think this could potentially be a win-win for both sides. It's a win for the Spurs because now they're getting a bunch of draft picks, and they can easily rebuild with those picks, and especially if the Hawks aren't necessarily good in 2 to 3 years, those picks could be extremely valuable. But I also think it's a win for the Hawks because they are getting a very talented all-star type player in Dejounte Murray that could help them on both ends of the floor and could potentially help them be successful in the playoffs. So there is a chance that both sides could be successful in this deal. But now let's focus on Dejounte Murray and the Hawks. How does the addition of Dejounte make the Hawks better? Now, Dejounte is one of those guys that worked extremely hard ever since they got into the NBA until it eventually got to the point last season where he was named to his first ever All-Star appearance. And offensively, I would say he looked very, very good. Now, in terms of his three-point shooting, Dejounte isn't necessarily a good three-point shooter whatsoever, only shooting around 32% from deep. But when you consider that the Hawks have a ton of shooting on their roster, and they also have Trae Young, of course, I don't necessarily think this would be a huge issue for them. But now talking about Dejounte's mid-range jump shot, I would definitely say he has a very good mid-range shot, as he has a nice pull-up mid-range jumper, as well as a catch and shoot, sidestep, step back, has a really nice crossover into a mid-range jump shot, even has a nice post turnaround fadeaway, which isn't necessarily something you see all that often at a point guard position. But the fact that Dejounte is so tall and has a crazy wingspan makes it work for him specifically, and I think that's a very valuable aspect of his game. But I would probably say that his driving and finishing ability is the best aspect of his game. Dejounte does a really nice job at driving all the way to the basket and finishing around players with crafty layups, either his left or right hand. He also does a really nice job at cutting once he is off ball, so a guy like Trae Young can easily find him cutting backdoor for a wide open dunk or layup. But also once driving to the basket, Dejounte clearly has the ability to posterize players at times as well, as he does have an incredible wingspan, as well as he's decently athletic, I would say. So his entire offensive scoring arsenal at this point, I would say, is very good, and in my opinion, it's only going to get better as time does progress. But even besides his individual scoring ability, Dejounte does an amazing job at passing and playmaking. Last season, he averaged 9.2 assists, which was a career high, and even besides the numbers, he just has a knack for finding his teammates out there. And overall, I would just say Dejounte has a very, very good basketball IQ out there, and he just knows where everybody's going to be out there on the court, which is always extremely important, but especially when you talk about a point guard, of course, that's crucial. And although on the Hawks, I would expect Trae Young to do most of the playmaking on this roster, it's always nice to have another guy that's very, very good at that in Dejounte. But now let's get into some specifics for why Dejounte makes the Hawks so much better. So the first topic that I want to touch upon is his defense. So it's no secret, although Trae Young is a phenomenal talent offensively, he definitely does struggle defensively quite significantly, and especially once it came down to the playoffs, it really was a huge issue for the Hawks. So finding a guy like Dejounte who could play alongside Trae and not only be a good defender out there, player, but be a phenomenal defender, which Dejounte clearly is going to be a huge benefit to Atlanta in my opinion. Of course, it's going to help them during the regular season, but in my opinion, where it's really going to help them is in the playoffs. Now, as I mentioned, certain teams in the playoffs did a really nice job at targeting Trae Young defensively, and now having a guy like Dejounte on your team and just adding another good defender to that lineup, it's just going to make it that much more difficult to target a specific player like Trae. But the next reason why the addition of Dejounte is going to make the Hawks so much better in my opinion is his general scoring ability. Now, just having an extra guy that has the capability of putting up 20 plus points per night is always going to be a huge benefit to you, no matter what team you are. And of course, this will benefit Atlanta tremendously, but especially once it comes down to the playoffs, this is going to be a humongous difference for Atlanta. Because let's say, for example, Trae isn't necessarily playing all that well in a specific game in the playoffs, having an extra guy like Dejounte that could really pick up the rope for you and take over for you in that specific game could be huge and could be the difference between winning and losing that specific playoff game. And that's why when you look at all the best teams in the league, they all have multiple all-stars or multiple superstars, because obviously if one player isn't playing well, the other guy's there to pick them up. So that would definitely be a new wrinkle in this Hawks offense. But another reason why I think the addition of Dejounte makes the Hawks better is his passing and playmaking ability. Now, this is something that I touched upon before, but just having two guys that have elite passing and playmaking abilities is just such a benefit to your roster. Because at that point, now you can stagger Trae's and Dejounte's minutes, and basically you can have a full 48 minutes of a guy out there who has elite passing and playmaking ability. So your offense is going to run smoothly for 48 minutes, and of course, everybody playing out there for the Hawks, their lives are going to be a lot easier, of course, with a guy like Dejounte or Trae on the court at all times. Because it's definitely really nice that the Hawks had a guy like Trae Young in the past that was a phenomenal passer and playmaker, but of course Trae did need rest at times, and when the Hawks did take Trae out of the game, the Hawks didn't necessarily have another guy that was an elite passer and playmaker, so the second unit didn't necessarily run as effectively as the first unit. But overall, I definitely do think the addition of Dejounte is a very good one for Atlanta in both the short term and potentially even the long term, assuming that Dejounte does re-sign with Atlanta. But obviously, I think he's good in the short term for all the reasons that I mentioned in this video, but I also think he's good in the long term as well, because he is very young and clearly is ascending. Of course, obviously, as I said, assuming the Hawks do re-sign him in a couple years when his contract is up. But one thing that I will say is I am very excited to see how the dynamic between Trae and Dejounte works out, because I definitely do think they have the capability of being a really good backcourt. But I guess only time will tell, and we'll see what happens with Dejounte and how he fits in with Atlanta. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the trade of Dejounte Murray was a good one for Atlanta, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.